Hey guys, Mr. Moscato with you. Today we're going to take a look at movie clip symbols and the Blizzard project. All right, so as we discussed in class, movie clip symbols, we've been using them so far to create scene level motion tweens. All right, so we create our object, we apply the motion tween to it. We change the size, we change the shape, we change the position, the rotation, the alpha value, whatever it is. All right, but all of that is happening at the scene level. We could have used movie clip symbols, we could have used buttons, we could have used graphic symbols, and they all would have behaved basically the same way, the way that we have been using them. Movie clip symbols, though, have the ability to have their own internal animation, which is nice when we're trying to create background movement, such as traffic or a snowfall or a crowd of people or something like that. What we can do is we can create a symbol, give it its own internal animation, and then use multiple copies, multiple instances of that symbol. When we rearrange each symbol slightly, even though the instruction set for that symbol is going to be the same from instance to instance, because of the change in size or the change in the rotation or the change in position, the object will behave that instance will behave a little bit differently. All right, so we'll be able to create relatively complex visuals with a minimum of actual work, actual number of symbols. All right, so let's take a look at the Blizzard project. All right, so if you go to the movie clip symbol content folder, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to create something like this. All right, so right away it looks very busy. All right, it looks like there's a lot of stuff going on. Right, so what we know about animation so far is, generally everything kind of sits on its own layer. And when we have this much movement happening, right, you would think that there are a lot of different snowflakes, a lot of different motion tweens, a lot of different layers going on here. All right, this project is actually very, very simple in that there is a truck symbol, all right, that I applied a motion tween to at the scene level. Okay, so that truck is going from right to left. And then really I only have two snowflake symbols. I only created two snowflakes, two different snowflakes. All right, if you look carefully, one of them has, I think, 8 points, and another one has 5 points. All right, each one of those two snowflake symbols has its own movement. All right, so there is a motion tween that controls its movement. Okay, and each snowflake symbol also has its own timing. All right, so I don't remember exactly what I did, but I think one of the snowflakes has a timing of like 23 frames. Another snowflake has a timing of like 17 frames, something like that. All right, two kind of different numbers. All right, so between those three symbols, we're able to create a relatively complicated looking, complex looking animation. All right, it's very busy. There's a lot of stuff going on here. All right, so let's take a look at how to create that snowfall. All right, so we'll go over to Flash, and I already have a project file going here. First thing I'm going to do, my snowflakes are going to be white. All right, so the first thing I'll do is I'll change the color of the stage to something else. All right, so the color of the stage I'm going to make like a dark gray or something like that. It's snowing, it's kind of a gray day. So we'll kind of set that up that way. In terms of the first snowflake that we're going to create, all right, I'm going to use a paintbrush. I'm going to set a color to white. Okay, usually snow is white. And I'm going to go ahead and draw. Let me change my brush size here, make it just a little bit thicker. All right, I'm going to go ahead and draw a snowflake, right? So we have something that looks like that, and maybe like that. All right, I'm going to turn that into a symbol. Okay, so modify, convert to symbol. I'll call it flake 1. All right, it is a movie clip symbol. That's exactly what we want it to be, and we'll click OK. All right, so now if I go over to my library, all right, here's my flake. I brought a picture of my truck in before. All right, but here's a picture of my flake, and basically what I have here, all right, is on stage I have a single instance of this flake one. All right, and I can also access it up here in the library in the preview. All right, if you take a look over here at the scene at scene one, all right, that's pretty standard. Scene one basically tells me that I'm working in scene one. I'm working at the project level, all right, of the scene. This is the timeline for the scene itself. Okay, now I want to actually edit the symbol. I want to go inside of the guts of the symbol and add its own internal animation. To do that, the easiest thing to do is to double click on the preview in the library. All right, so I double click on the symbol here, and you'll notice that the scene has changed, or the stage has changed. Up here I have a navigation, scene one and then flake one. What this tells me is that I am working on the snowflake symbol itself. Down here, this is the timeline for the flake, all right, for flake one. All right, notice also that my snowflake is not a symbol anymore, it is a primitive. All right, so when we go inside of the symbol, what we see is what the symbol was built on or built with. And that flake one symbol was built out of a primitive drawing. All right, so this is a primitive drawing right now, right? So what I could break this apart and do anything else that I could do to a primitive object, right? An unprotected object. Okay, so we can actually create some relatively neat animation frame by frame by breaking something apart and bringing it back together. All right, but in this particular case, that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to add a motion tween in here to this thing. All right, so I'm going to select the object and I'm going to add a motion tween. All right, now, interestingly enough, all right, I need a symbol to create a motion tween. Flash is asking me, right, because we're inside of the symbol itself, the inside part of my flake symbol is not a symbol, it's a primitive. So we actually need to create a second symbol to create the internal motion tween. All right, so we're going to click OK here. All right, and I'm going to use the default symbol one name, all right, because flake one is the symbol that we're actually building. Symbol one is just a temporary, it's an internal symbol. We're not going to do anything other than apply a motion tween to it, all right? So I don't want to get the two confused. All right, so I know that when I go to add my symbol instances, I'm going to use flake one and not symbol one. All right, that's why it's always a good idea to name your symbols at least at the scene level. All right, the next thing that we'll do is we'll create the motion tween. All right, so by default, I have a movement here of 24 frames. I'm actually going to extend that out a little bit to 27 or 29 frames. Let's go 27 for this one. All right, actually 29 is probably better. And I'll tell you why. Whenever I create movie clip symbols, I like to have prime number lengths of time. And the reason for that is if I have two prime numbers as lengths of time, as they start to run, they're not going to repeat as often as numbers that might come together, later on. So, for example, if I have two symbols, and one symbol is 15 frames long and another symbol is 20 frames long, well, every time I hit 60 frames, right, which is 2.5 seconds or so, they're going to come back together, right? They're going to repeat. That action is going to repeat. If I have two prime numbers, all right, maybe 29, and maybe the next one is going to be 23 or 17 or something like that, it'll be quite a few cycles before those multiples actually, converge. All right, so just a little, just a little math there going on. All right, so for this particular object. I'm going to create kind of like maybe a bow tie kind of movement. Okay, so I'll drag them there. And the movement is going to be relatively in a short space. All right, because I don't need big sweeping moves. All right, for this symbol. All right, I just want to create kind of a swirling pattern a little bit. All right, and I do want it to come back more or less to where it was, just so that when the flake does reset itself, it's not going to pop too much. Okay. Now I haven't changed the size or added rotation or anything like that, but you certainly can do that. You can certainly have your flake rotate, and you can do that with the transform tool or the free transform tool or whatever. All right, so that's the movement for my first flake. I'm done with that. All right, so I'm going to go back to scene one. So to get back to scene one, I'm going to click scene one. All right, and then here, right, so right now at the project level, I have a single frame. At the However, right, so if I hit enter right now, nothing's going to happen, right? It's a single frame. I don't see any movement at the project level, at the scene level, right, inside of the project file. However, if I hit Control Enter, Command Return, all right, for the Mac guys, all right, you can see that there is my flake kind of doing its thing. Okay, so even though the animation is only a single frame long, that single frame is repeating itself over and over and over again. All right. However, the snowflake symbol, right, is 20, what do we say, 23 frames long. So it's going to run for 23 frames before it repeats. All right, so a little bit more on that in a sec. At this point now, and I'm going to call this flake 1 layer. All right, I'm going to add multiple instances of my flake 1. All right, be careful not to add symbol 1, right, because symbol 1 does not have the internal animation. Flake 1 has the internal animation. And kind of, if you're not sure which one it is, right, so if you take a look at symbol 1, the preview, all right, take a look up here in the upper right-hand corner when I click on Flake 1. Flake 1 has a little play button there, all right, and that means that there is internal animation to it. All right, so that's kind of what we're looking for. All right, so I'm going to add multiple instances of my Flake 1. All right, and I'm adding these all to the same layer, right, which is convenient. I don't need to add, right, I don't need to add multiple layers here, okay, because the movements are all internal. Okay, so that's pretty good for right now. Again, if I hit enter, nothing happens. Even if I have a lot of frames, right? So even if I have 50 frames here, right? So I'm going to press F5 out here at frame 50, right? Nothing happens. So the movie clip symbol movement, animation, you cannot see at the project level. All right, the only way that you can see that movement is, right, whether inside of the symbol itself, okay, or you go back to scene 1, when I hit Control Enter or Command Return for the Mac guys. All right, so now in terms of a snowfall, this is not very convincing yet. Most snow does not move in lockstep with other snowflakes. Okay, but that's okay. So far, so good, right? We have a bunch of individual symbols all doing their thing. The only problem is that everything looks exactly the same. All right, so what we're going to do next is we are going to start to modify each one of these symbol instances. All right, so I'm going to use the selection key, click out in space just to make sure I don't have everything selected, and then I'm going to use the transform tool or the free transform tool, and I'm going to resize and rotate, all of these instances. All right, so all I'm doing is I'm changing the size, the rotation, okay, the overall kind of shape of them, right? So I can italicize them a little bit, right? Change them a little bit. So every instance is going to be slightly in a different position, in a different size. all right, than the other ones. All right, so that's pretty good so far, I think, right? So now when I hit Control Enter, all right, you can kind of see what's going on here, right? So all of the flakes so far are doing their own thing, all right? They're all kind of moving, right, in different patterns, all right, depending on what their rotation was, how they were set up, that sort of thing, all right? There's still an obvious pattern to them, all right, because no matter what we do, we're still dealing with a single snowflake so far. All right, so we do have to add more than one snowflake to get more of a random pattern. But we have the beginnings of a seemingly random pattern here. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer. So I'm going to lock the flake layer. And I don't necessarily have to do this, all right, but I find it easier to kind of compartmentalize the movie clip symbols by type. Okay, so if I have flake 1 on one layer, I'm going to add flake 2 on another layer. All right, so I'm going to build flake 2 in a moment here. Flake 2. I'm going to hide flake 1 real quick just so it doesn't get in the way as I draw this thing. All right, and I'm going to draw a second flake. This one I guess we'll only do at 5 points so it's easier to see. Draw it, turn it into a symbol, flake 2. Okay, here it is in my library. I want to add that internal movement. Okay, again, right, we're inside of the symbol. The inside of the symbol is a primitive. I'm going to right click on it, create motion tween. All right, it's going to create symbol 2, which is fine. All right, the timing for this one, all right, is the first one was 23, so I'm going to make this one, I guess, something like maybe 31 or something like that. And again, another prime number. I like prime numbers for a bunch of different reasons, but you know, this is as good a reason as any, right? That they won't double up anytime soon. All right, I'm going to draw a slightly different pattern. It's still going to be bow tie-ish. Okay, and maybe I'll bend these lines out a little bit just to make it a little different. All right, so this is going to be a little bit more figure 8-ish, I guess. All right, something like that. All right, good. I'm done with the movement for flake 2. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bunch of symbol instances of flake 2. Again, remember, be careful not to add symbol 2. You want to add flake 2. All right, and I'm going to kind of drop a bunch of those guys on stage. All right. And I also do this on multiple layers just so that as I am, kind of seeing each one, I'm not necessarily interfering with the layer below it. All right, so I'm not, modifying symbols that have already been modified later on. All right, so I have a bunch of flakes here, right? So between scene 1 and scene 2, there's a lot of flakes there, all right, which is good. All right, I'm going to use the transform tool, the free transform tool here, and we're going to start to kind of move these guys around, resize them, change them, okay, and do all that good stuff. All right, so here we go, very quickly, kind of moving around. And again, I just want kind of random movement, random resizing. All right, to each one of these flakes. All right, this is really like the most work we're doing here, is just kind of messing with each one of these flakes a little bit. All right, but when it comes right down to it, I mean, what do we have? We have, a dozen flakes on one side, right? On one layer, a dozen flakes or so. On another layer, I don't even know how many that is, right? Dozen, 15, even if it's 20, right? All right, so there we go, right? So we have a pretty complicated looking, robust little snowfall going on there, right? So there's a lot going on there. All right, so I dare anyone to kind of look at this, who hasn't watched the beginning of the video, and tell me, yeah, you only have two snowflakes there. All right, and you have multiple instances of the snowflakes, right? So there we go. We have a pretty full snowfall so far. All right, so far so good. All right, so in the second half of or in the next video, I should say, what we'll do is we'll kind of finish this up, right? We'll add all of the background elements. We'll add the road. We'll add our name. We'll add the car, all right, that's driving down the road, and we'll go ahead and finish this up. All right, so stay tuned for part two. Thanks.